So, and now we are live. Hi, everybody, and welcome to this panel. Topic is Nordic 2030 AI Ambitions and Actions to Attract Talent. My name is Daisy Lullman, and I will take care of this panel today. And with me, I have three gentlemen that will present themselves. And so we just start. Please, Kai.
Oh, I'm going first. Thank you.
Yes, you're on my right side of my screen, so that's why.
That's good. So my name is Kai Andersson. I work for the National Swedish AI Center, AI Sweden, where I focus on the area major impact initiatives, large programs and initiatives meant to leapfrog progress in different fields. Currently, we're focusing a lot on the healthcare system to make sure that we can utilize AI throughout to create more health for everyone, but also media and democracy and transportation and infrastructure. That's me. Over to Christian.
That is my left.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, great to be here. Great to be in the panel. My name is Christian Goodman. I'm the global head of AI and data at Tietoevry, one of the large IT companies here in Europe. I've been working with AI for a long time, and now it's particularly we're applying AI and data-driven solutions to our Nordic customers in many different sectors: healthcare, finance, logistics, the public sector, and yeah, that's my role. I'm also at the Nordic AI Institute, where I'm executive director, and at the Karolinska Institute, which is a medical university in Sweden too.
Thank you. Nico, your turn.
Yeah, so thanks for me as well. So great to be here. So I'm Nico Vuokko, head of technology at Silo AI. So my own background is did a PhD in machine learning in the past, and then done a whole bunch of mainly startup environments and in machine learning before getting now into Silo AI, which is nowadays actually pretty clearly the largest private AI lab in the Nordics. So we have already 150 AI experts, with more than half of them having PhDs, building AI for the people. So we work on AI across a wide range of industries, whether it's computer vision, NLP, time series, and so on, taking the intelligence into production there.
Great. Perfect. And then we have a really heavy knowledge about this subject and from different part of the industry. That's really, really good. So let us jump to the first question. We know that AI is actually changing radically, reshaping our society and the way we work in our companies. So the question is, how do you see the Nordic region gearing up to increase this maturity in the area of innovation and competitive with the new digital economy, both in country level, maybe, and then a little bit on the industry level? So, Nico, what is your opinion about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I guess in principle, like Nordic region has like pretty good starting point, but like we've always had a really strong and good quality education, also in the digital field. So basically the starting point there is pretty strong. Also including this question of like stable society, because naturally there is going to be a bit of change in how things work in the societal level as the outcome of this technology. Then again, I think in a way, like AI is going to be like a really, really long trend. So it's not a question like it's going to take the next 5 years. It's a question whether it's going to be like 20 or 30 years, kind of a question. And like how do you actually move all the private sector to do that scale of investment? Because you have to start pretty early if you actually want to stick around all throughout. And I think that is something where we're still like, at least in Finland, where we see things a bit more closely, and then also in other countries where we're now getting more deeply involved. And there's a good start, but there's still a lot of work needed to sort of ramp up the ambition in the private sector.
How is Sweden doing this, Kai?
I think one of the great strengths we have in the Nordics is the Nordic model, and that is that it's natural for us to collaborate between public sector and the private sector to create welfare and a better society for the future. And I think that's embedded quite naturally. So it is quite natural to create projects and solve problems together. And I think that's the most important thing we need to kind of stick to. And everyone's also aware that we're small countries. We're like together, we're like Singapore on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah.
So we need to collaborate. Almost no organization can solve everything on their own. So we need to share knowledge and work together to really create that advantage and move ahead.
How do you say, Christian, from a company level, what do you see about this?
You just quickly repeat the question. I think I dropped out there for a second. It was about how the Nordic AI system is.
How we gearing up to increase, the maturity in this area for innovation as a Nordic region, and maybe a little bit the local development between local and region.
Yeah, I think we are, getting into this topic now. I can see that certain activities we are getting quite strong, like, the networking part here in the Nordics is, I see this working out quite well compared to other regions in the world. There's a big openness across companies and understanding that things have to move forward. The benefit is also that the countries in the Nordics are a bit smaller. So it means that you don't have to organize and get under one umbrella so many different stakeholders. If you look at larger countries, like here in Europe, even Germany, France, UK, they have more stakeholders, they have more countries. I mean, every state in Germany, for example, is as big as Sweden on its own, right? So that means that you have a lot of representatives, big companies that have certain views. You have more diversity in the manufacturing industry, in the finance industry, and that means that you need to organize yourself. Whereas here, in Sweden and Norway and Finland, there is more interaction. So the companies know each other, they know each other often quite well, and then you have a basis of collaborating with each other. However, I must say at the same time, we have a long way to go. So I often mention a couple of things, like we are netto exporters of talent. We need to also see that we get an entrepreneurial drive into the system. But maybe we discuss that in a second. So.
No worry. Do you have any examples, like specific or like country-wise initiative between countries or industry or public and private sector that you can actually tell us? Because it sounds really like we're collaborating, but do you have any concrete example? Like, how do we do this? Maybe Nico, do you have an example?
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of this initiatives in a country area, whether it's like governmental, like in Finland, we have this sort of Aurora AI initiative that is intended to sort of do the AI transformation of the public sector in general. And then there's like additional initiatives like the Finnish AI accelerator that we're running ourselves with the ministry. That is sort of trying to sort of kickstart the AI activity in the early stage of the private sector. But in a way, it is still an early stage. I do agree with Christian. Like there is a quite nice collaboration, like at least compared to other regions in the world. But it's still like simply really early days for AI in general. So it hasn't really reached the scale that it would really hope for in the long run. So it's sort of like it's a mixed blessing to have these small similar countries next to each other, because in a way, like none of the markets themselves are really big enough for like the big investments that AI needs. But then again, like all the companies know that, all the actors know that, so they do understand that you have to do something that scales beyond different countries, something which doesn't come that naturally, for example, for American companies, because their inner market is always so big. So it's about, like, I guess, playing to your strengths as well here in the Nordics.
Okay, you mentioned that you work with the healthcare industry. Do you have any examples that you can share? I think it's a really exciting topic.
Yeah, I would say one super exciting thing after working for one of the leading deep learning companies for 3 years for Peltorian, then moving into the public state sector, was that in healthcare, in the public sector, it was even clearer and almost easier to work with AI, because the end goal was so naturally clear for everyone involved. So there's no politics. It's health for individuals. Whereas in a big private organization, sometimes people have different agendas, different reasons why they go to work. So in that, within AI Sweden, we have lots of partners. So there's hospitals, universities, healthcare regions or municipalities, but also private companies like AstraZeneca, where we collaborate to work on creating systems that the healthcare, that hospitals can use, but also to create more life science innovations and precision medicine.
Yeah, there's also been a lot of like this interoperability of data activity in the industrial sector as well. But there's often been these sort of like challenges that when companies or the public sector for that matter as well, if they try to assemble this sort of like large, everyone's getting involved initiatives for interoperability, and then it just gets so complex that nothing actually really ever happens. But actually, I'd really like to see the Nordic region to sort of replicate something that I've been seeing like in the Central Europe, especially in Germany, where there's this really long industrial tradition, long, strong ecosystem of supply chains and suppliers working together with the OEMs and so on. And these sort of like these OEMs that are heading the ecosystem, they are building their own initiatives for how the whole supply chain can share data. And when there's sort of like one single driver who's sort of like in the end calling the shots, then they're actually getting forward a lot. There's actually a lot of results coming out of that. And that might be a good starting point for also in the Nordic sector. Just simply focus on where's the small gains to be had within like companies that already work a lot together.
And I guess this pandemic we live in today, the COVID-19, have actually helped to accelerate the need of this kind of AI and digitalization as we have been stuck in our homes. So have you seen any, like acceleration due to, something like a pandemic? Christian?
Yeah, there's certainly, I think it is different in each industry. Some have stopped certain initiatives and sort of go back to the basics. Others have accelerated the adoption of digital tools in general and would have AI technology in their organization because it would have taken a lot of burden away, like I'm thinking also of the public sector where some might remember a year ago, then, a lot of companies, a lot of individuals started lodging applications to the certain authorities in order to get financial support, right? I think that happened across Europe and across the world. And of course, then you suddenly have authorities being overwhelmed with tens of thousands of applications. And there you can use quite a nifty sort of AI technology to help the process. And it's fair to say that we tried very hard too, but it's also fair to say that I was a bit optimistic that the crisis.
Oh, we lost him for a second.
You still need to be going through the due diligence process of utilizing AI. So there's no shortcut or something. And I wanted to say also, just there's sort of it's a two-sided story. We started off with the positive side where the Nordics, they network and collaborate. But I've actually spoken now recently also to a business leader that's working now that was hired from the Valley for a very large Nordic company. And he sees that potentially also as a negative. We have a very flat hierarchy. And it's a very iterative process of making decisions. So you have in the Nordic countries in general, maybe the exception is the Finnish culture is maybe slightly different, but generally you have the sort of this roundtable discussions. And so that can make the process of decision making, which is very rapid with AI technology, perhaps a bit slower, right? So you have sort of that potential part where you need to be aware of this, of this sort of that aspect, making the decisions quickly.
Interesting.
I think I actually agree over there as well with the culture. So it's not like homogeneous, and we got started from Finland naturally, and now been expanding to a few other Nordic countries, but also to Central Europe. And it's sort of like required us to be pretty mindful that the way we work around AI with customers in Finland, it's not necessarily the way you have to do it in Denmark or in Germany, where the culture is really different. So sort of have to be pretty respectful about the thinking, ways of thinking on the other side of the table.
And maybe just one other quick thing. I was just thinking that it just came to my mind. This
Yeah, we should guess what he's saying. What do you think? You know him.
Yeah, I would probably guess that it's talking about that we have another strength in the size, and that is that the network in AI is quite familiar in the Nordics. I think most of us who've worked a while know each other or are on email or text basis. I was guessing what you were saying, Christian. We
didn't have any AI support, to continue your talk.
You know each other too well. Yeah, I can hopefully, if the connection holds. I was just saying that, I mean, it's also smart to find, not like to get everyone under one hat when you have a network, right? So we learned this when I built up the French and the German sort of network, which is similar to AI Sweden. So this networks of many companies and many organizations. But it was actually, we learned from the Japanese system, they built something up there too, but they chose to not get everyone under one umbrella, choose certain key players and sort of expand from there. Because of the effect that Nico mentioned there, you can, if you have too many around the table, it means you have to get 100 or 150 stakeholders or more, depending how many you have in your network, happy, sort of. And that makes it more difficult.
I think Errol made a very good point in the comments, and that is that we have a few new companies, or new, like Klarna and Spotify, that has a different kind of leadership that is, I would say, a modern mix of American and Nordic, where accountability and goal-based strategy is much clearer, and the traditional, I would say, maybe more Swedish consensus way of things is less on the agenda.
I read in Eurostat presented some industry stats regarding AI use in companies in Europe. I was kind of shocked that it was only 2% of companies today that utilizing AI or advanced analytics, and though Finland and Denmark was like after 11-12%, but it still was really low. How you see this maturity, coming, 2% is not a lot for private companies. How is the maturity level? How do you see this, in companies?
At least I think like it's really big question. Like what does it mean to have AI maturity? Like it's one thing to use AI as part of like commercial applications that you bought.
I guess a chatbot is called AI.
Yeah, for example, but or then another thing to sort of employ AI in your own R&D. But even then, there's like a third question, like how do you build a company that can sort of repeatedly start to use new AI technology as the AI progresses? So it's like really far from just like black and white over there. But I think overall, like since AI does often like require a lot of like upfront investment before you actually gain the significant value out of that, then it's pretty natural actually that the use starts from these large industry flagships first, large enterprises in a leadership position in the field, and that's the place where we've also seen like the things getting started. So all the different Nordic countries, they all have their own like key industries, like places of strength where they have global scale. And actually, like it's interestingly, all the Nordic countries seem to have sort of a very different kind of a profile when it comes to these strong industries. But nevertheless, it's for every single country, it's always the same thing. It's those largest, strongest players in those strongest industries that are clearly much farther on the AI path than all the others, actually.
I think you make a very, very important point, but also maybe I would disagree with the last part, because I think what you say is important. There's a water divider between are you working with AI or are you really working with AI? Because there's the big players who apply AI to make the old way of working more efficient, and then there's the new ones like Klarna and Spotify, like that Errol mentioned, that they still want to solve a goal or reach a goal, but the way to get there is less important. And that's where AI can help to make predictions and reach that goal. Whereas in the old legacy organizations, the way to get there is almost more important.
Yeah, and I guess in the Nordics, it was important to bring a lot of talent, like new people coming in. And you mentioned the university. I guess, in the Nordics, we see that we have this kind of new people, students and people coming out to the market that actually can help us to accelerate. Or what is your opinion about, do we have enough talent? How do we bring more talent in? How you feel about this?
We need more talent every day. There's never going to be enough smart new people, and I think the Nordics, Finland, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden are fantastic places where you can work. You can do your master thesis, so you can have a university positions and industry positions in tandem, or work in industry and achieve goals and solve problems, and also be able to do research and innovation. There's not only one or the other.
I have a question that came in the panel. Do you see a higher demand for AI consultants in the industry? I guess,
Yeah, I can at least frankly say it's a really strong demand over there, simply because companies often struggle with two related questions. One thing is that there's a huge demand for the talent. There's basically, we did this State of AI in Finland survey last year, where basically among the companies who actually knew what they would like to do with AI, so they had actually interest in it, the lack of talent was by far the primary reason why they're struggling. And the problem with these companies is that they don't have any experience in how to hire this kind of people. So they simply struggle in finding the right kind of people and getting up to speed. And the other question is regarding how do you actually build products around AI where there's this highly probabilistic nature. It doesn't really fit the way products have been built in the past. And that's really the place where AI consultancies come into the scene, basically, because they have a lot of experience in knowing what is the kind of expertise that is really relevant and necessary, and they know how to actually manage and execute AI work that produces the value that's hoped for.
I have really interesting question from Francesca Hoyer. And I will read it so I don't say it wrong. Do you think that is a field where in the future the competence or skills of people training in the humanities and social science could become more important? And what will be your advice for a humanist who wants to get involved?
Can I start? Because
yes,
I think this ties into also Noah's question about the need for multi-year experience and academic background. I think more than ever already today, expertise, where you understand various fields, are very, very important, and the willingness to learn. Anyone can learn nowadays to create and train an AI model. It requires a few weeks or a few hours on edX or Coursera, or even Elements of AI to get started. But the willingness to learn, and I think my message to you as recruiters or companies out there, if you're out there looking for talent, don't just go the standard HR route that just write down how many years of experience someone has to have or PhDs. Listen to Elon Musk. Have them solve a work sample and show what their learning ability, and I think that's the most important part.
Good. Christian, I see that you want to say something.
Yeah, no, I'm crunching, and it's an interesting question which seems to naturally come up when when we come to the topic of talent in the Nordics, right? So as we mentioned and as we agree, there's a lot of talent is needed. But what's very interesting then is that when I speak to journalists on panels, that you jump more or less straight to education and universities. That seems to be a natural path. But I actually, this is something that doesn't naturally, I never said it, like I think this is of course one important part, certainly, more PhDs. But I think the ecosystem of creating talent is much wider. So the academic and scientific part is very, very important. But what we also need to create is really these ambitious environments where people are feeling attracted to and want to really grow in. So here, I mean, something that I think, Kai, you have in your title, major impacts, like visionary projects where people feel attracted to. Because I can say, I mean, part of my education was here in Sweden, and I've had a lot of colleagues back in the days that decided to go to the US or to other places in the world because just the projects were more substantial. I remember one guy saying that, like he wants to go to the US because he can work for companies that can send robots to Mars, and then I was saying, oh, can't you do that here in Europe? He said, no way, there's nothing here. So, I mean, you have sort of talents that feel attracted to big challenges, right? And then so meaning also you need an entrepreneurial environment. You need companies that have an ambition, that have a vision. And going back to also what we said before, the legacy companies or companies that have the value creation in their organization is at another part of their logic. So when they create, in let's say manufacturing a chainsaw, or they create or they are a logistics company, the company over decades, maybe 50, 100 years, have developed a very different business logic, and the experience lies completely somewhere else. It doesn't lie in the algorithms, and it doesn't lie in the data, and it certainly doesn't lie in AI. And then it makes it very difficult for them, completely understandable, to transform their culture. And if I may, just one last quick point about the humanist question, right? So how wide should an AI education be? I myself studied psychology at the same time when I studied AI. And during my career in AI, I have gone, and this is why I chose AI, because it's so rich, right? I went into medicine, I went into design, I went into graphics, I went into art, and all these areas are connecting. And I would say that since AI can be created and can add to any of I think there are 180 industry sectors, I think anyone with any background that gets into this AI field deeply can make a major contribution. So companies in the arts, in the logistics can need people that have quite a different background, to spice it up.
I love that comment. For me, understanding how neural networks function has made me understand psychology a lot more.
Yeah, that's the same for me, actually.
There's still
it's not as scary, doesn't it?
How do you learn, how do your kids learn things? But I actually also like what Christian said about the excitement, because it's simple also on a societal level, because the amount of additional need that we have for people who actually can build the AI, understand AI, whether it's from a humanities or technical background, there's a lot to sort of learn. And it takes 10 years from people now getting started in these ramped up, enlarged university programs to go through the education and become experienced AI experts. So that's not going to be the solution. So instead, we need to train the existing workforce. And for the best way to do that is to support and grow these companies that really build something that is exciting around AI. And what they will then do is sort of bring along and pull the people that they have along with them and learn AI.
What is the key roles you think they are mostly missing today in the market that it should be, if I have to be something in a few years back, if in the future, what I should, train myself for? You remember you said we need to be a teacher a long time ago. We will need teachers. What do we need in the future?
Yeah, for me at least, I think it's always a question it's really hard to succeed in something you're not really excited about. Mm-hmm. So it's not about the question where there's demand, but where can you actually become really good? And what Kai said about this sort of crossing, combining multiple different types of expertise, like that's really the key. And then there's a lot of different places where you can excel. So simply think about maybe like what are the like a few different areas of expertise that you're good at, that you're excited about, what you can actually combine with AI, and then sort of get started along with that.
Okay, any comment?
Yeah, I would say evolving into thinking it's exciting to read research, like new research and new innovations, and building things. To have the combination of those things, and maybe thirdly, constantly work on not being afraid of not knowing what the hell we're doing, because that's the key to continuously evolving.
And I mean, I agree. And then I would say, in addition, there's also a caveat, maybe something to be also cautious about, which I'm seeing a bit in the ecosystem, because AI is still new and is extremely powerful. It's also unregulated. And what that means in practice, what I'm seeing a lot is, and I think we need to be very careful about it, that you start having folks, how to say, flipping and working in the field that do not know this area well enough. So, you start, let's say, you have a sort of an inflation of titles and an inflation or misuse of skill. And there is certainly a big difference between knowing, doing a course for 4 or 8 weeks, that gives you an insight into how you program Python in a neural network. That's one part. But AI as a field is huge, right? This is it's certainly, absolutely certainly not just learning neural networks or machine learning and then you're done. I mean, AI has so many questions that come up around, the Searle's room. There's so many paradoxes. There's so much wideness in knowledge discovery, multi-agent systems, all sorts of things that, for example, the recent regulation that was proposed by the EU Commission didn't even capture. We could have a completely different panel about the regulation, but there are certainly we need to be very careful that we're not moving into an era where medicine was maybe 300, 400 years ago, that everyone was an expert on how to apply medical knowledge, right? And which ended up being like bloodletting as being the primary way of treating people. I think it was maybe 600 years ago. But anyway, so that's something that I think is very important also, that we make sure that we have the right standards and the right knowledge in the right areas, and not just make everything, inflate everything,
Yeah, there's probably a big risk for snake oil salesmen, and if you're looking for a job, you should probably be wary if you're offered a job as an AI evangelist or an AI strategist in an organization that has no intention to really to not build anything.
One of the skills that we often from my work in a large company that we look when we hire these kind of skills is we always talk about the soft skills, how you can talk to business, how you can, because I know a lot of the universities and a lot of the consultants work in the technical part, but how do we challenge technical people that by nature are a little bit like, not there outgoing, how, because I think this is one of the skills we really, really need, technical people to be able to talk to non-technical people and trying to translate this. How you see that, transition going, please?
I would flip the question and I would say it's not the problem that technical people are bad at expressing themselves. Maybe we need to understand what they value, and that is straightforwardness and honesty, without putting in a lot of nuances and politics in every sentence. So I would say probably maybe look to what's the way they're communicating? Can we learn from them?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. Business I'm challenging you because I know what you're saying, but Nico, what do you think? You're working there.
Yeah, I would sort of like flip it around a bit as well, but from a different angle, because naturally it's like if it's a question that needs to have successful communication across a number of roles, then it's not the job of a certain role to make that happen, but it's for everyone to make that happen. It does require for people from all the different areas to learn to understand what are the interests and approaches that other people have over there. I wouldn't really think that that's like a significant problem there in general. I think it's more of like a separate role in question, like people who actually do have the insight on what makes critical AI use cases tick, and also understanding this probabilistic nature of AI and how to fit these two things together. It's not really, it's not a business expertise, it's not a technical expertise, but it's really understanding how the real world works and how to fit something sort of like technology that is still on the way in getting better into that picture.
But if, for example, if you want to pitch and you have a technical solution that, from an AI solution in a large company, you want to get a budget for this, you need to have a pitch to have, and that moment you're trying to explain, what I want to achieve in a company, how that, what kind of focus this, this important key of on companies that you maybe started just recruit yourself, you're a new AI, you will change everything. How what do you think is the biggest challenge to pitch these kind of things to get funding?
Maybe I can very quickly just, I would say that I agree with you very much. It's important that you know the value that you're contributing to your own company and to customers. And at least my team, they go through a lot of this, what do you want to call it, sparring sessions, where I'm very much trying to ask them, okay, so who's benefiting from it? Who's the owner of the problem? Where does it go to? And I think this is very, very valuable in addition to the technology understanding. And I often also say, and I recognize, and I say it in my company and also to customers, that the people in the best position to answer these types of questions, in my view, are still the AI experts and scientists and the technologists, because they know the limitations and they are also able to, they have sort of the black belt when it comes to the technology. So meaning that if you are pushing back, if you say, okay, well, this is a value pitch that I have, from an AI scientist perspective, and it sort of gets a pushback. It says, oh, it doesn't work that way. Maybe we need to do different. The technical guys that have a PhD in AI say, they can switch it around. They have the creativity to sort of turn around and suggest alternatives very, very quickly. Whereas if you have a one-trick pony, you know one thing and you have one understanding of one technology, then you have only one value pitch. So you cannot pivot in online and real time. Whereas at least when I'm in meetings with really smart tech folks, they can switch it around in any way. So if you guide it in the right way, you can end up in very fruitful paths in the organization.
We have 2 minutes left. Do you have any? There have been some questions coming in, and one of these that feels that there's a little bit unclear how the professional requirements for entering in the industry seems unclear compared to other countries. How do you, how do you feel? What specifically should an AI professional do to land opportunities in the Nordics when it's a little bit unclear what people, what do they want? Do you have any tip?
Well, one thing is when you start discussing job opportunities, make sure to ask the question, what's a successful delivery 1 year and 2 years from now? It will probably lose you a few jobs along the way, but those jobs that are unclear are probably not the ones where you're going to be happiest anyway.
Interesting. Nico.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of work in Finland, a lot of discussion as well, like how to actually, how does the country get better at attracting foreign talent? It's sort of like a learning journey for the whole society over here. But it's definitely getting constantly better in terms of like also like the experience of moving to Finland or to other Nordic countries just as well. In terms of like I guess like practicalities. Well, one way to land into opportunities in Nordics is definitely just go to silo.ai. So that's the way to learn and get excited and hopefully find yourself working with AI in a very highly skilled AI expert community.
Christian, a few more seconds left.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, with Kai agreeing that I lost a lot of opportunities exactly because I asked too many smart questions along the line what you suggested, right? So where do you want to be? Do you really need someone, you know, with that skills and so on and so on? So it's but it depends what type of game you're playing. I mean, it might also just be fine to go into first jobs and then you get your feet and hands dirty, you know, and then you can start asking more smarter questions because it's an ecosystem that's evolving. We're still at the beginning of it. I think we all agree we have 20 years ahead of us. Yes. So it's, you know, it's the first couple of years. Just get into it and see where you get exciting colleagues to work with. That's probably a really important factor. You know, work with the best people around you. Silo, Tier to Every, and AI Sweden. There's a whole bunch of great companies, I think, where you can start.
Perfect. So keep being smart. That's a really good summary. Thank you so much for your time to spend in this. I hope everybody joined the session, and I hope I see you in a real life as in the future. Okay, thank you so much. Bye.
So, yeah, thanks so much.